A very good evening to you all. This is Point of View. My name is Pamela Motene, and I'm sitting in front of a gorgeous audience. Welcome to you all in studio. Say hello to everybody at home as we gather around for another edition of our book event. And today's book is called The House at 6001. And I wondered whether it's 6001, 6001, 6001. But nonetheless, the author is here, Lebu Diseko, and her gorgeous family is also here. Lebu, thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much. I was going to say, I'm sure you can hear the family contingent over there correcting and saying it is 6001. So I think there were, people came and stayed over the years. It was a house many people were welcomed in. So other people may say 6001, but the Diseko family are clear 6001.
Locate the house for us.
So it is on the corner of a street in Orlando East. It is a street where people know their neighbors, but it is a street where people sweep their front yards. I don't know if I'm telling family secrets now, but I remember when some of my cousins stayed there. Yeah. The neighbors would check, are you sweeping the yard? Are you looking after, the house as your grandparents would have looked after it? But it was also a house that was always had its door open for people that needed a place to stay, be it because of, their political activities or just because they were friends of my dad's or any of the other young people that stayed in the house. It was, my mum has this beautiful passage that is in the book, that it was a place where there was order. Everything happened at a certain time. We woke up, we cleaned, we cooked together, we ate together. On, Saturday afternoons, they'd pick the vegetables in the garden, prep them for Sunday lunch. So it was, a very typical Orlando East house. But I guess in terms of some of the goings on there, maybe that was less typical in terms of my grandparents' sort of tolerance for what came with political activity.
50 years later, after 1976 horror, I think it's a horror. And you decide to write this book. It's a memoir.
Yeah.
And you obviously recognize the fact that everybody has their story to tell. But this is your story. Why was it important for you to document this moment for yourself right now?
Well, actually, it was never meant to be my story.
I can see that. You took a while to get there.
Yeah. It was never meant to be my story. I really wanted to honor the people that made me, and also the people that made this country, that gave their lives for us to have the democracy we have today. And I have always been kind of intrigued by the youth. When I hear my aunts, uncles, mum, dad talking about their lives, just how young they were when they were involved in what were highly dangerous activities, and juxtaposing that with the fact that they did live life as young people do. They had an eye for fashion. If you look at the photos from that time, the, amazing kind of mini skirts, platforms, they
loved.
And this is the thing, to dare to love when everything around you is saying you're less than human. Not only that, we're going to make sure that you don't survive. I think all of those things really fascinated me. All of my elders were connected in one way or another to the events on June 16th. My mother was a teacher at Bafeni Junior Secondary. She taught a lot of the students that organized and kind of gave them a listening ear, helped them. My mum, Khulu O'Hara, was also an organizer and involved in that. My Rakhadi, who's in the audience, was at Baragwanath Hospital on June 16th. She saw the injuries, the horrific injuries people came in with. My uncle, my Ram Khulunet, was a journalist at the Rand Daily Mail. And then my dad, who was in exile at the time, had been one of the founding members of SASM, which was the organization Murphy, Morobe, and some of the high school students were part of. And it was that connection between the high school students and the younger students. The people at Bafeni Junior Secondary were much younger and had been on strike for a while, that led to the June 16th uprising. At the same time, even though in the days, weeks, months afterwards, people experienced horror, brutality, still children were born. My parents got married. People fell in love, as you said, all against the backdrop of this kind of brutality.
You mentioned the fact that you all had a different story to tell. You want to tell a different story. Your mother wanted to tell a different story. Your father wanted to tell a different story.
Yeah.
Were you surprised at the, I would call it almost reluctance to open up about this moment in our history from your parents' side? And your aunts and everybody else that you spoke to?
Look, the reason I am laughing is because for me, this was always meant to be an ode to the people that gave so much to us. It was an ode to the people that made me, but it was also an ode to those children, many of whom died that day. And we have the freedom we have because of them. It is hard, though. I didn't anticipate that maybe those people didn't want an ode to them in quite that way, you know. I think because of the way we have spoken about some of these things, you know, June 16th had a political significance. It was necessary to find a way to speak about it. I also hadn't realized the depth of trauma, you know. I was totally unprepared for the struggle discipline that still exists. There are things you just don't talk about. And I also, you know, my Rakhadi says it's not in our culture to like toot your horn about those things. And she's not talking about our culture as Africans. She's talking about the culture of the movement, because there's always somebody who's lost more than you. And it was a collective struggle. So I was very surprised at that. So I think, yeah, my mum, dad, aunts, uncles had different perspectives, different things they wanted told. And I think it was I'm sure they got sick of me trying to get those things out of them because of the story I wanted to tell.
You know, there are stories that you grow up hearing, or they are part of our DNA. As a nation, this is one of those days that we commemorate every single year. But one forgets that there are things that are still left incomplete. We are still to do certain things as a nation. We still haven't counted the number of children we've lost. I mean, I think about that every day because especially recently we are dealing with that TRC inquiry. Yeah. And people forget just how much unfinished business there is in this country. And this book reminded me of that.
So, you know, I understand that it may not be possible to account for every single life lost. But I did expect that since our liberation, since 1994, there would have been a concerted effort to list those names, come up with a proper number. And I still don't know. I haven't been able to find out how many children died that day. I expected to find somewhere maybe a scroll of names, maybe a list of, you know, people. The only list I was able to find, maybe somebody else has been able to find this information, was in the Celia report, which claimed that there was, you know, less than 20 people that were killed, which we know to be a huge understatement. So how can it be that it is the Celia report through which I found out that there was, you know, that named an 11-year-old boy that was shot and died, but we haven't done our own work? And reading the newspaper archives in the days afterwards, there are a number of articles by Nat Sirache, my uncle. Nat Diseko was my uncle. There was also Nat Sirache. And he wrote a couple of articles that really struck me. One of them detailed like 9-year-olds being shot in the back in the days afterwards just because, you know, they tried to stop their aunt being killed, or just like the horrors that happened afterwards. So if that's what happened in the days afterwards, you know, there must it just is impossible to me that there were not younger people, more people than we know who died. Also, one of the things that I found still to this day very difficult and kind of undoes me is when you look at the pictures of the kids on their way, like at the start of the day, and they're smiling, and kids with gap teeth, and kids, I don't know, like it's like 9-year-olds that are missing their front teeth in that way, right? And to me, I also think about the parents, maybe some of them have passed away now, but who never had clarity about, did their children go into exile? Did their children die? Were their children tortured to death? What happened? So I think that all over the world, nations make stories. They may not be entirely accurate, but there is a concerted effort to make a story about the people and the things and the events that matter. And time and again, when it came to the children, I just found there weren't the details there,
And many of the people in the audience would know that we also locate this moment only in one location on one day, whereas it was much bigger than that.
Yeah.
Alex, KZN, we know that. But we don't even pause to imagine what are those communities feeling and how have they felt left out in the moment of reckoning about what happened in the day.
It was right across the country. Well, it spread right across the country, and it went on for months.
Yeah.
And the horrors that communities had to live with. I mean, the fact that there were police, the army just rocking up at schools looking for quote unquote suspects or like, it's insane. The fact that children were regularly shot, tear gassed in the street for months afterwards. I write in the book about the fact that funerals became a point of resistance, but the police would also turn up at the funerals and they would regularly start shooting. And so they became these places of defiance where you'd come to bury someone, but generally you would end up with more people to bury. And the trauma of what that does. And then also people told themselves, you can't cry, you can't let the government think they've won. So yeah, people weren't even given the dignity of being able to grieve. And yet every day, new grief was wrought on them.
I wanted to speak to your mother personally because I absolutely loved her relationship with Seth at school.
Yeah.
Because again, it reminds you this was just a child, right?
Yeah.
And this was a teacher, a teacher and a student learner relationship that was so normal. This was just another normal child. And here were these other big things that were happening in the country that needed to be confronted.
I think one of the things that struck me about her, and this is also the way she raised me, is her insistence that I believe that you are smart and I won't allow you to think you're not or to behave as if you're not. And Seth remembered that. And it really reminded me of when I was like a kid at home. That's very much her. But also the fact that she was only 19 at the time.
Yes.
So there was a slightly larger age difference between her and Seth. I think for most of the time she was teaching him, he was about 15. But for some of the other students, she wasn't that much older than them at all. And yet
this is why they liked her so much.
But she did, they called her ma'am. The other day I asked her what she was most proud of in terms of her contributions in the struggle. And she said the fact that those children still call me ma'am. And the fact that she still calls them children. What are they in this? Almost 70. We laugh, but I think that, in my writing, I was very intentional about referring to the children and young people as children, as kids. I think that black children world over, but also just generally, we call them youths. We kind of, okay, a youth's not an adult, but you adultify them. And I think in my mum's memory, they are children. That means forever, I have a duty of care for you. And I think that is a really powerful thing to carry with you. You know, it's like no matter how old I get, I'm never, you know, my Rakhari's equal, my mum's equal.
You're the child.
Exactly. But I think that exists for a reason. And often black children are robbed of the privilege of that level of care. Like, I am forever responsible for your well-being. Like, I must care about you. So I think that's what that embodied for me.
I was happy for you for writing this book, because in our daily lives, we hardly take a moment to talk to our parents, you know, to really talk. You live with them sometimes, especially as a young person, but you realize much later just how little you know them. And I got the sense that this book and this project gave you a window into your parents that you had never known existed.
Well, there's a lot I didn't know about my dad at all.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, clearly I'm not a man, but I think that
they said he was funny.
Yes. They said he was hilarious. They said he was the
They
life
said he
and
was
soul.
fun.
They said not just fun, life
of
and
the
soul,
party.
life and soul of the party, my dad
And
was.
you hadn't known that.
I didn't know that. But I think that what happens with men and the way we socialize men is you're not allowed to cry. You're not allowed to say it hurts. There is no language for this thing is so, I miss my family so much. There's nothing for that. And so, you know, even in the UK, you hear stories about people. Someone told me about a neighbor of theirs who they found out just before he died that he'd fought in the Second World War. He never talked about it. Just, it was a thing he put away. So on top of the struggle thing, I think that that is something that because of the way we socialize men, they often do. So I knew my dad, we spoke, it's not like he was a stranger, but in many ways he was a stranger. There was a large part of his experiences that I didn't know, I didn't understand, that explained how he was and that changed him. He said there were a lot of experiences that fundamentally changed his personality. What was interesting for me as well was I was also very embarrassed. People would talk about the incredible contribution that he made. I didn't know any of it. He didn't talk about it. How do you, when people are like, oh, your dad's so amazing, and you're like, I don't know what he did. So part of this journey, and I must say my dad was incredibly kind and generous to me. I had a lot of questions, some of which, I don't know, I'd have had the same patience for. But I did a Freedom of Information request, a PIO request.
Yes.
And that's how I got his security files. And I was afraid when I did that like, oh, he wouldn't be very pleased about that. But he really embraced it. And we went on this journey of exploring what had happened to him, why it was that he left the country when he did, and how that impacted him.
I was struck by how you struggled with you, the journalist, you, the daughter, and you just being a part of our history, just searching and seeking to understand better who you are, who we are, and where we come from. When your father went with you on tracing back his steps when he left South Africa to Botswana, I thought that was a very interesting moment, because there are moments where I think you're battling with, why isn't he telling me the story the same way he told it last week, type of thing? Because the journalist in you is looking for the facts to remain the same. And you were struggling with that, and yet it wasn't about the facts. It's what he was feeling.
I also had to really take myself aside there at a moment, because I was like, is this like a hostile political interview? Why are you like, hey, you know? But I think there's a lot about that trip that I haven't really processed.
To this day.
Yeah, because I
Wow.
think it would just,
Yeah.
If you think, and again, you know, I'm here saying, oh, why didn't this person open up to me, blah, blah, blah. If I think too much about it, I might break, actually. If I think about the fact that, what if he hadn't made it? What if actually, when in the police files, they thought that they had arrested my dad.
Yes.
They actually didn't have him in custody at all. But what if they had? What if he was at John Foster Square like they thought he was? And so on this trip, I think I just sort of compartmentalized it and made it a reporting trip.
And you did acknowledge that when I think somebody in the family asked you, you said, well, I haven't, you know, I was numb. I didn't feel much.
But also, even on the trip, they were like, hey, don't go into Botswana. I was like, you know, marching ahead like a journalist trying to, and they were like, where are you going, you know? But again, my cousin actually said to me, this must have been a very moving trip. And I just didn't really have the words to say, I don't feel anything, because I can't feel anything. If I allow myself to feel a thing about this, I won't write.
He felt stuff, though. It was cathartic for him.
Yeah, it was. It was. And he said it was like therapy.
Well, he says if it weren't for you, he wouldn't have done the trip, even though he's always wanted to do the trip. And I thought that was interesting. What was it about the trip that was it scary? Was it? But you did that for him. You did that for him. And I think you haven't taken that in.
Yeah, no, I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh, that hadn't really occurred to me, to be honest with you. So that's something to think about. I hadn't thought about that at all.
086-0000-959. You can dial in and you can chat to Leboe as well. And 063-688-0959. You can send your voice note. So, did you know before you embarked on this project that your father could write poetry?
I had heard a lot about my dad's poetry.
There you go. You had heard it.
I'd heard it, but I hadn't heard the poetry. I'd heard about the poetry. Wow. And I think, you know, unfortunately, because of, you know, raids by the police, because of exile, moving all of the time, a lot of that has been lost. But I did find some of it in the security files.
Yes.
And I don't know, it was the security forces said his poems were seditious in nature. And that was the primary reason they said that they banned him. It was his poetry, his writing, also organizing other young people. They cite a particular incident where he went to a school for people of children of Indian descent. I mean, wow, going to another school of other races and riling them up as well. So that was really their issue. But I mean, my dad was days, like 2 days off his 21st birthday when he was banned. Some of this poetry obviously was from before that. For me, the idea that a state would be so shaken to the core by the writing of someone who under law wasn't even an adult at that time was bizarre to me.
He couldn't believe that.
No. And there's the moment in the book where I describe like when they came and gave the banning order. My dad was doing the gardening. They were working on the rockery, their parents' rockery, with his sister, my Rakhadi, my Rangwani Tepsi, my Ramakhulunet, and my dad was just in his shorts. And he was so...
Did they not laugh at the police? I think something like that.
Well, I don't think they laughed at the police, but afterwards I think they looked at the paper and kind of laughed to themselves. I guess like almost like kind of defiance.
Disbelief,
Maybe disbelief, maybe defiance, but also I think the attitude of resistance at that time, you're not going to let them get, you know, who are they to think they're going to get to us in that way? My grandparents, though, were aware of the magnitude of that and what it meant. And my dad said he did kind of laugh along, but he did feel a sense of trepidation. Obviously, it's a big thing, you know.
Of course, when we speak of days like this, one kind of doesn't think of moments leading up to the day, very tense moments. And I was thinking of the day before. the 16th, and how people like Seth went to bed early, and
I think
people just doing stuff like normal people would do stuff, anticipating this day, and nobody really thinking it was going to be a big moment the way it turned out to be.
There were like final last minute arrangements. There was a meeting the evening before at 6001, kind of young people, kids coming together to organize and speak to my Ramkhulu Net.
Yes.
One of the key players, Zweli Sizani, came to 601 specifically to speak to him so he could make sure that they got, not just that they got press coverage, but also because he wanted to hitch a ride with whoever the reporter was, because it was a good way of, if you're riding around with a reporter, you get to see what was going on in the along the march. But one of the things that actually made me really sad was Seth's girlfriend at the time made him a cake.
Yes, was it not his birthday?
Yes, it was his birthday. Yes. And she bought him a birthday. She bought him a birthday cake.
Yeah.
And it's like you're saying, those ordinary moments in and amongst this. My Rakhadi says she had no one had any idea what this would be. She just thought this was just some kids that were going to be marching along with some signs, and who could have known what would happen?
And then your aunt was working at the hospital.
Yeah.
So, I can't imagine that.
Yeah. She says, how do you get through something like that? You just go on autopilot. But, she phoned her brother, my Ramkhulu, who was in the newsroom, and said, they're killing the children. And, I can't imagine having to deliver, to go, to actually, do your job at a time like that.
There's a moment when the police were looking for your dad. And I just kept thinking, boy, I don't know whether that's luck, when he was hiding in the I think it's a high ace.
Yeah.
And the police came to look for him on that one particular day. He hadn't found a place to hide. And they knock as they would in the house, rude as ever. He was right there in the car. They missed him.
That yellow high ace.
So many stories. You should write about the high ace.
No, I should, because the high ace, my Otata, my grandfather, used to sometimes take my dad to his political meetings in the high ace. My dad used to go and visit this beautiful woman, his girlfriend in Deep Kloof, my mum.
What color was the high
yellow?
ace?
In the yellow, when he was banned. The high ace was the car that took us into exile. We had an accident overturned on the way, but that high ace helped take us out of the country. And there was that evening when they were looking for him. And I guess the high ace has higher windows than your average car. And they didn't look inside, and he just kind of lay further down. And his heart must have been pounding. And after that, his older brother, my Ramkhulu, was just like, we're finding you somewhere else to stay. And he went into, I think prior to that, he'd been I guess on the run, so kind of moving from place to place, and then he went into hiding proper. But
we want to fast forward to when you moved to the UK.
Yeah.
And how difficult that was for you as a child.
Well, I think one of the things that I really didn't know before I started working on this book, actually, was how challenging it was for the parents. One of the themes in this book is parenthood, motherhood. Mm-hmm. I was very interested in my grandmother and how she mothered all of these young people, her own and others. And I don't know, maybe I'm selfish, but I think my instinct would be to say, hey, guys, it's enough now. She never ever said that.
No.
And the choice my mum also had to make as to whether to leave me, whether to take me, and she chose to take me. My grandparents had already lost their son to exile, my dad. They really wanted me to stay. They wanted to look after me. I guess for them, I wasn't just a grandchild. I was a piece of their son in a way that they didn't have him there. So, there was a period of negotiation before we went into exile. But I think, yeah, I was interested in how the two women, the older woman and the younger woman, negotiated that. Yeah. And so began the painful conversations between my mum and my grandparents over whether I would stay with them or go with her. A series of delicate talks with each side negotiating for a piece of their heart that was manifest in me. My grandparents made this case that life at 6001 would have been more stable than exile. This may have been true, my mother said, but she would sooner have cut off a limb than leave her baby. Another family might have spirited me away once it became clear that my mum wasn't going to change her mind. It was a measure of my grandparents' decency, she says, that they didn't do so. Each of them tried to be kind to one another in the house, mindful not to say words that could not be taken back or to force the rest of the family to take a side. But the emotions were raw and the discussions often fraught, particularly for my mum and grandma. My grandfather would gently coax his wife, saying, "Lebu is not your child. You must remember that." Eventually, time was the arbiter. My dad had a window of just a few weeks when he would come to Botswana to collect my mother and me. In the last week of June 1979, he flew to Gaborone. Then he made his way to the village of Mchudi, where he stayed with O'Hara's sister Bridget and her husband Lindelwe, and waited for us to join him. When my mum got word that he had arrived, she sat down with my grandmother and held her hand. "I'm going to meet Mate, and I'm taking Lebu with me," she said, adding softly, "We're not coming back." Each woman could see themselves reflected in the eyes of the other. They were two mothers trying desperately to hold on to their children. As they sat together, my grandmother allowed herself to accept for the first time what was about to happen.
It's really a memoir, but a lot of it has to do with June 76, that very unfortunate day. When you think of what this book has done for you, how do you, and I imagine you feel different every single time, or over time it has felt different. How do you reflect on your piece of story, your family in this moment, and how you see it now as an adult?
So I think one of the most challenging things for me was looking at how I had the narratives that I had held about my childhood, my experiences, and the place the struggle had in our lives. I grew up, the struggle was ever present growing up. And on the one hand, there was a part of me that wanted to be an MK soldier. There was a part of me that also just wanted to be ordinary. There was a part of me that was holding marches in the school playground against PW Botha. There was another part of me that was just like, I just want a mum and dad that mum that bakes cakes and a dad that goes to work and comes back, and that's it. I just want normality. So I think because of that, for me, there's a lot of things I'd held on to as if they were truth, when actually they're an interpretation of events. And I was kind of forced to look at the evidence and say, no, people really tried their best. And these were people that were carrying so much trauma, people that were homesick every day, people that didn't know what was going to happen next. And they loved me the best way they could. The other thing that I had to really look at is my parents as people. I think for most of us, our parents, they're just parents. That's their job. That's their totality.
And they were young when they had you.
Yeah, very young. My mum had me when she was 20. I guess my dad was going on 24. So yeah, they were very young.
But he leaves at 23.
Yeah, he'd already left the country. I met him when I was 2. That's when our family came together. So I think really seeing my parents as people, seeing the ways that I'd kind of, your own narrative and the way you've looked at your own story, and that actually these things are very nuanced, you know.
But they were also working through it as they were going along. They didn't have all the answers.
Well, the thing is, as well, who did they have to say to them, "I'm sorry, it's so hard"? Who did they have? And equally, who did anyone in South Africa at the time, any black person that was going through what the experience here was, have to say, I'm so sorry that this is so hard? There's a line in the chapter of the day, June 16th, when Seth and Murphy and all the kids go to Winnie Mandela's house. And some of them go to Winnie Mandela's house, some of them go to Desmond Tutu's house. He feeds them. And I say, you know, nobody told them it was going to be okay. The focus was on like getting them to the next place. But even if they had had the time, it would not have been true. It was not going to be okay. So no one had that. And, you know, whether it's my parents or people here.
Do you want to read some more while we get the mic around? I've got a few mics roving, folks. For those of you who want to ask questions, just maybe wave a little bit to Tando and she'll get the mic to you while Lebo reads us another little passage.
Okay.
Do you need another minute?
Just give me a second. There are so many that I
think of a photograph that you refer to in the book of you. I think you were 10 at a protest. Yeah. So proud of yourself. So proud of yourself with the little fist. When you look at that young little girl now, what do you think what do you wish you knew?
I think I wish she had known how hard the people around her were trying, and that they were just as young as, well, okay, they weren't 10, but they were babies too, you know. They were babies too, you know.
You found a text?
Yeah.
What page?
So it's page 39, and it's the passage talking about that reporting trip, as I called it. My dad was like, we're just retracing my steps. There is a thing I do on reporting trips when emotions threaten to overwhelm me. I focus on finding out the facts. What time did he arrive? Night or day? Why can't he remember the exact village, what the village used to look like? How come some of the details he's given me now are different from what he told me before? I had to remind myself that this was not some hostile political interviewee. My dad was explaining his experiences to me after nearly 50 years and a life on 3 different continents. As we followed the path through the bush, I tried to note down as many details as I could, asking the names of specific trees and bushes and how the escape team would have found their way in the dark. My dad, his aunt, and our guide for the day watched bemused as I walked past the sign indicating South Africa's edge, determined to see better into no man's land. Be careful not to cross into Botswana, they reminded me, snapping myself to my senses. I barely gave myself the chance to take in that moment. I think it was deliberate. If I had, I would have been forced to face the questions that still terrify me. What if my dad had been captured or even killed?
I noticed that it took you a while to talk about yourself in the book. You did mention that you were reluctant.
No, I'm laughing because
to place yourself at the center of the book.
I'm at the front. I'm in the intro and I'm in the prologue. I put myself there. I'm there.
At what point did you surrender to placing yourself in the story?
In part, it was because of necessity. I think just as the story developed, it became clear that I would have to be, it didn't make sense without me in it. I don't know that I fully surrendered, even when we were kind of in the editing process. The editor was like, okay, you need to move some of you forward. It just broke my brain. A friend, it's only because a journalist friend of mine who was with me in the writing class where this was kind of, the seeds of this began. He said, you do know how to copy and paste in a Word document. And I know that it's scary, but you can do that. And if it doesn't work, you can Control Z. So,
but I'm impressed. You were quite vulnerable, and you opened up about really difficult things.
Look, I think one of my one of the reasons that I was so reluctant is because it just felt very self-indulgent. Actually,
Okay.
I've got my own set of experiences, but I didn't grow up here in the 1980s. I did not see the townships burning. I did not grow up seeing, police killing people. I just didn't have to live that. So, and also this is a book where the central event is a massacre of children. So it just felt a bit like, my experiences, and I was reluctant to do that. And also, when I look at what my parents have been through, sure, I wrote some letters and I went on a march and held up my fist, but I've done nothing like the people who fought and died for this country.
Can you appreciate now how all of that is what shaped you, and how you are a reflection, and you reflect back to young people today who are struggling with things that you struggle with?
I mean, I think I can see part of this writing, part of this began because I was trying to find out more about, I realized this was a journey of trying to find myself. But I think, I don't know, I still struggle with how much of, how, that line between being vulnerable and just being self-indulgent, because again, there's people here who quite rightly will say, well, you spent a year in Harvard. That's when you came up with this idea. And that's because you went to school in Oxford. And that's because you had all these other, so like, what are you moaning about? So it's a conflict. Even some of the things that I found quite painful around language and belonging in South Africa, I understand that people might say, well, hang on, you had the privilege of a great education. You chose to stop speaking because some people laughed at you. You didn't have to do that. What are you moaning about?
And are you not at a point where you understand how even that is legitimate?
I guess it is legitimate.
That your own personal struggles are themselves legitimate.
I think now I feel like I'm really being interviewed.
It's your book. It's your book.
It's very uncomfortable.
She's the owner, right? I've got the mic going around. I'll give you a minute to think about that. Yes.
Now, I'm sure my mum's at the back thinking, now you know what we went through.
Good evening. My name is Neo. I think firstly, kudos to the book club for really profiling and curating these book events that are so poignant and meaningful for us to reflect on where we come from as a people, as we navigate present day realities and look ahead. Auslewo, congratulations on this precious work.
Thank you.
I think it's very significant that it's coming out in this year. It's really heartwarming that I think the preservation of memory is taking the form of memoir and really personal account. My question is a bit wide-ranging and it's two-pronged. Firstly, I mean, it's touching on what was said just before I took the mic. Did you have any sort of, epiphanies about the forces that shaped your formation as a person in light of what you do today? And then secondly, what are your hopes and perhaps even apprehensions for the children of Soweto, both near and far? Thank you.
Yeah, I did. I did. I learned a lot about myself on this. And I think there is a theme, I guess, in me, in my family, of not accepting what is said about your future, the theme of resistance, the theme of if people say, oh, you're not clever enough, you can't do this. I can't tell you the number of times people have said, oh, you haven't got what it takes to be a reporter, this or that. And I think that thing of, no, you don't get to define me. If I want to do it, I'm going to make a way. And I look at the people who made me, and that is what they did. I think also I realized just how motivated by love in different ways they were. Particularly, I think I look at my mum's story and I think she was motivated by the love of a man, a love of country, a love of me. And I think that's something that's common to all the adults in my family. And I'm someone that feels very deeply, is very kind of passionate about things. And I think that's sort of a thread in our family. I don't have like neat answers, and I didn't intend this book to be like my therapy. But I think I wanted it to also be the beginning of conversations, opening up the space for conversations. So in terms of younger people, I hope that this is a starting point. And then actually, I think on a more practical level, I hope that there's a bit more thought given to the legacy of 76. I went back to Pafeni Junior Secondary with my mum. She hadn't been back there since she left, actually. And it shook her for days afterwards, the condition of the school. And if we say we care about Black children, these children that died, what are we doing for them now?
You speak of your mom, and your mom stayed with me a lot, actually, because she, like so many, was the uncelebrated hero for me. So we have these big characters who can claim big things. But when you look at the story, so many, like your mother, shaped how these young people were navigating what they were struggling with. She was quietly doing that for a long time, helping them deal with what they're feeling, how to, eat this massive elephant one bite at a time, nurturing at the same time. Yes, people are not going to see her as a hero, but I think we have a lot of those people. This is that we don't recognize as heroes, who actually are the people who shaped part of what we have become.
Well, I think up and down the country, it is appropriate, it is proper that we acknowledge our leaders, but up and down this country, there were ordinary people that did extraordinary things. My Rakhari will never tell you she's extraordinary. She'll say, oh, I'm just an aunt, I'm just a Rakhari. But you speak to my mum and she one of the tiny little things she said was, your Rakhari, the things that she did in the struggle were, similarly, my mum Khuluahara, she very, very humble. She never would talk about herself in that way. But yeah, she was a force to be reckoned with when it came to the struggle. But my family are not unique, and that's really, they're special to me. But I wanted to get across that there are many, many ordinary families who were the people that built our freedom.
Who gave so much.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm Leslie Digene, and I'll be short. But there are two things. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
I got 2 invitations here. One was from Exclusive Books. They insisted that I would come here. I didn't know where I'm coming to.
Welcome.
But I came.
We're happy you came.
And then I opened my phone. It's Martha Diseko saying, you must come. My daughter is doing something there. Now I'm here. So first of all, very congratulations. It's very important that you did what you did. And writing is not an easy job. Believe me. I've done it. I'm doing it. It's tough. And people must never underestimate it. But that's very beautiful. So I know your dad for many years. I know him from London. I used to be at Sussex at the time, and at LSE. So we've been knowing each other for a long, many years. I knew of him also through Dr. Mukwape at the University of Natal, medical doctor. Sorry, I have to laugh now. And then finally, I met him again in New York. He was a diplomat by then. And I'm just trying to make you to laugh so that I've got one question to ask you. So my last meeting and encounter with him in New York, he was the most, and you've done a good job in explaining, but there's one important thing you must always don't forget. Mate had the best intellect in our movement. Very intelligent. A guy who could make you laugh correctly. He was making you laugh about the most saddest things and moments that we went through in life. He make you laugh about it. He was an ardent reader of George Orwell, Animal Farm. I mean, he's a member of the ANC, and you'll be able to say, this is an Animal Farm. And then he would read Ernest Hemingway. Beautiful literature. I mean, Hemingway in the ANC, someone who understands Hemingway. You know, The Wild Man in the Sea and so on. Brilliant guy. That is what your father is. That's another element that has to be shown about him. His beauty, his intellect. That was he was. But I've got one question, then I leave you now. The question I'm going to pose to you. When we write these stories, people therefore then turn to say to us, and actually I'm also part of those questions, because people then turn to us, it's nostalgia. We are nostalgic. I'm sure you must have received those questions as well. And I've heard already before I came here, that kind of a question that, hey, yeah. Maybe you can explain that, maybe you have received that kind of question. And I'm sure that question must have arisen to you. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I hope when people read it, they don't get that sense. I mean, some of the stuff is pretty horrific. I don't think there's anything nostalgic about, not knowing what's happened to your child. There's nothing nostalgic about Hastings Ndlovu's mum talking about, how she just can't stand the memories of her son because he's not here anymore. So, yeah, I hope that people see that I've tried to grapple with trauma, with brutality and the things that people lived through. At the same time, I also wanted to highlight the fact that people lived full lives and that apartheid tried to tell us we weren't people, we weren't full people. And people were like, no, I'm going to the party. I'm going to look nice. When you see pictures from like Drum Magazine, I think one of the reasons that they're so moving is because people didn't have very much. People were denied so much and they were like, no, I'm going to look good. The homes were neat. There was all of these things were forms of resistance. And so for me, it was about showing us in our fullness and that we cared about each other and that we loved each other.
Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. My name is Wendy Isaac. Congratulations. This book, I'm really looking forward to reading it. And Pamela, thank you for doing this. I think this comes at a really significant time. I mean, obviously 50 years since 76, so it's a national priority, and that makes perfect sense. I think we all need to be diving into the details of what you've written about, because these personal narratives often get missed in the broader political discussions about, what has the ANC done? What more should it do? But beyond, over and above that, and I think one of the first things you said when you started talking was how, sorry, I wrote this down because I didn't want to get it wrong. Funerals became a place of defiance. Police also showed up every day, so people weren't given the space or the dignity to grieve. I think from an international perspective, and I think this is why I'm stepping in now, I have a quick question. The reality right now is that the crime of apartheid, what it was, how it impacted on people's lives, what it did to women, men, and children is being questioned. And the reality is that there are conversations at various levels, particularly at the UN level, where they're asking, how do you define apartheid? What happened to women? What happened to children during apartheid? So your book is coming at an excellent time for that, right? And I think it. So my quick question is, where else are you going to have this conversation? I mean, it's great. KFM is amazing, and people are going to be listening to it and are listening to it right now. But where else are you taking this to make sure that people are paying attention to this particular publication? Thank you.
Thank you
You're
so
going
much.
back home. You're going back to the
Yeah.
UK.
I have to say, it was, as when you were talking about the things that are forgotten or the things that aren't remembered, one of the things that also I found quite distressing was the people that were forgotten. So, for example, the contribution of Zweli Sizani. I could find nothing about him in relation to June 16th online. It's only because of conversations with the people that were players and then actually going to the archival material. Similarly, Ndade Super Muloy, who's now passed away, he was an ambassador, so there's an ambassadorial profile, but there's very little about these people that did so much. We just don't really know very much about them in relation to this. So that was the first thing. The second thing, I know my skill set, and I'm not a diplomat. My mum is an ambassador. She's, I guess, the person that would know about kind of how apartheid is being defined at an international level. What I would say is I deal with stories. I think stories are important. And I think that there is a sense in which the narrative about what happened then has shifted. Mm-hmm. It's interesting to me, even the way that June 16th is talked about. Obviously, there was the way it was downplayed by the apartheid government. But even, I think it was in 93, an interview that Murphy did with John Robbie, where John Robbie kept asking about the dogs. Oh, you guys killed the dogs, you threw stones at the dogs. And, I've never established what that series of events, I've never really established the truth of that. But what I know is there were human beings, human children, babies, and there were dogs. And at that time, the narrative was such that it was okay to have that conversation. Immediately 94 happens. I think that we felt that we'd agreed narrative about apartheid, what it was, who was wronged, who was hurt, or at least, there were obviously people on the either extreme, but there was like a middle narrative. And I think if you look at the language that's used now, that's shifted. And so I don't know that it's necessarily for me. I'm just one person, but I do think that it is for all of us to be intentional about the stories that we tell, and the narratives we tell about the past and our present.
All right, so we continue our conversation. My guest is Lebu Diseko. It's the house at 6001. And if you want to know where that house is, who stays there, by the way, now?
So at the moment, it's friends of the family, but at various points, my cousins have lived there. Yeah. It just depends what the circumstances, who needs to be there, but it's still the family's home. We were there at Christmas.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice to know. Hello.
Evening. I just want to say congratulations once again. My name is Minenhle. As a young person, especially that was born after 1994, there's a sense of guilt that we carry because I feel like I can't ask questions. Because if I do, and if I question anything, and it's always like this dark cloud, like you're just carrying this thing forward. And I've studied the Constitution back to back. I know it like the back of my hand. So it's very difficult for us to ask those questions. And it's very difficult for us to also adopt our history and apartheid and to even see it for what it was and what it is essentially, because, it's a ripple effect and we still see the results of it today in society in 26, 50 years after the 1976 uprising and everything else that then happened from that moment. So I just wanted to know from you, in doing interviews and in asking questions about the significant event that I believe did change a lot, and it moved the struggle further. Perhaps what would have happened 20 years or maybe 1994 would have been 2004, but it did push the pendulum much more than what would have happened, because then the world started to pay attention to what was happening to South Africa. So I just wanted to know from you, how did you get to that point of then asking those questions that we can't ask those questions? We feel like we can't because, again, it's this dark cloud that's over us. Thank you.
Do you know, I totally relate to that feeling that you can't ask questions. I mean, as I said, part of the challenge I had in terms of my dad was that, I mean, people would tell me he'd done all of these things, but you're supposed to magically know these things, but you haven't been told these things, and then you're embarrassed to ask, and then the people also are traumatized. Mm-hmm. So maybe when you ask, because they, you know, you're scratching on a wound that is very deep, they don't necessarily have the right words or things to say. So I totally understand that. I just would say, keep asking in the most gentle way that you can find, because you know, if you don't carry, you can't know if you don't ask. Equally, you can read, you can, you know, do the historical things, but as I said, I mean, I found it incredibly difficult to find a lot of this information.
Brother Milton. Hello.
Yes, good evening. Thank you so much to Pamelo and Lebu and Kaya FM. What a wonderful way to spend a Thursday evening. I just want to pay tribute to Lebu Diseko. She is an author, that's why we're here tonight, and she wrote this amazing book, The House at 6001 Orlando. I read the book cover to cover when it was in manuscript form. Exclusive, yes. It was just an amazing read. It was unputdownable. Those who know English, I think from Orlando West, you can say that. Now, number one, Lebu was in Washington on the day of January 6th, when the mobs stormed trying to overturn an election. So she was there reporting to the whole world on BBC. She's an amazing journalist. And she also covered the funeral of the Pope, many other stories I'm just mentioning because we don't have time. But I just wanted to say that she's not just an author and a child of the struggle. Yes. She is current, active, intentional, alive now. She's reporting amazing things. She was in Rome, the funeral of the Pope, and we are so proud to have a South African there on the global stage. Her father, Mate,
I think that deserves a round of applause,
Yeah. Her father, Mate, has been spoken about here in past tense. He's alive. I was with him on Tuesday. And I just wanted to lastly say that in matters current affairs, Lebu does not support any football club. But she did whisper to me that her sympathies
is with Pirates.
Lie with Orlando Pirates and Arsenal. Congratulations, Lebu. So proud of you.
Thank you, Milton.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
One last person at the back there. Oh, we've got somebody else.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. And thanks, Sis Pamela, for this. My name is Shylock Matsunyane. I just want to quickly say, but Milton, we are only exclusive books. Yes, you're not exclusive. Sis Level, you're saying in one of the books that you were signing with us, you're saying, I hope that through examining our past, we can make better sense of our present and chart the path for our future. And I want to ask you what the future looks like to you in relation to to the house at 6001, taking us back to history and looking at what the history looks like. Thank you.
Oh, that is a really interesting question. You know, sometimes I think, maybe I can live there. But I don't know. I guess my lifestyle is such that it's quite nomadic. I don't know if it would, I don't know if this time it would really work with my current work. But it's home, you know. We had an incredible Christmas there, the whole family, this year gone. So it's still very much the place where we are centered. But I guess your question is also about where is home? Where do you make home? And for me, you know, South Africa has always, it lived in our house as home in the UK. I've always been connected to South Africa, but I think I am better able now. I feel rooted. When you're rooted and when you understand where you have come from, you can actually be anywhere because you're rooted. And that's also kind of what I was trying to say, that, you know, if you don't know who came before you, what happened before you, it can actually kind of, you're just blowing in the wind, you know? Whereas when you have a sense of the truth of who your people are, what they stood for, what actually the blood that runs through you is, you are rooted and you can take that forward.
I just want to say that I really hope you get yourself a copy. It's an important book. But for me, what I really hope this book is able to achieve is to give us the courage to go there, to allow ourselves to open up about our struggles, our traumas, because while it is traumatic, and I speak to a lot of people who've been struggle heroes and they won't go there. It's too difficult. But if we don't do that, we risk our stories being taken over by other people and retelling them in a different way. So I hope that's what this book is able to do for all of us. Thank you for giving us that courage. And ke a leboga, Diseko. The book is called The House at 6001. It's by Lady Diseko. And we continue the show after this.
Thank you.